People who have made large romantic gestures in public and gotten rejected. What was it like? This wasn't super public, but I was dating this girl for a while and decided to ask her to be my girlfriend. I went to Build-A-Bear to have a bear made with a voice recording of me saying, "Sarah, will you be my girlfriend?" I went to her house and gave it to her and asked her to press the Build-A-Bear's hand, and the message played. She politely declined because she wasn't ready for a relationship. Her family was having a party this day and her 8-year-old sister, who saw the Build-A-Bear who loved stuffed animals, grabbed the bear. Her little sister began running around the house pressing the bear's hand repeatedly. Her whole family and family friends heard my desperate request over and over again. I couldn't bear to hear my voice asking her out anymore, so I left shortly after. I asked a girl out at a high school football game our sophomore year. She said no, so I said bye and got up and left the game. I thought nobody I really knew saw, so it wasn't too bad. Later that night I was hanging out with some friends and her brother showed up and told everybody like it was a joke. That was almost worse than her saying no. Seems like it's mostly high school kids doing these grand gestures. I blame movies. There is no consideration for the risk reward. A more elaborate and public display is not going to increase the chances of them saying yes. All it does is increase the amount of humiliation if they say no. I'm not sure if this counts as a romantic gesture or not, but I had a huge crush on a guy I would see around the gym. I noticed he would go to the water fountain a lot, so I decided to buy him a Gatorade. Full stop. I summoned up enough courage to give it to him. I walked up to him and said, "I hope you don't think I'm weird, but I bought you a beverage." He smiled and told me it was pretty weird. I then walked away without looking back. I haven't seen him since. Edit. Spelling. Update. Went to the gym today and still no sign of him. My college roommate proposed in mall once. The bad part is that he really went a bit too over the top, and that kind of freaked out his girlfriend, who was quite meek. She whispered into his ear that she's not ready and then went home. My bud just shrugged it off. He didn't seem phased by it at all. He knew that he wouldn't see any of those people again, and if he did they probably wouldn't recognize him. He was really level-headed about the situation. It was quite strange. I asked a girl to prom in high school this year by putting her name and prom on the scoreboard before baseball practice. All the baseball players were there to witness it. She said no. I see her every day, so it was awkward as duck for a week or so. My friend got the bright idea to ask a girl to prom by telling her that he finally got the gonads to ask her one day during class. The rest of the class was then prompted to pelt her with crumpled gonads of paper while he waited eagerly for a response. Word of advice: try not to be so literal with that kind of stuff. Especially if it's testicle themed. In middle school I wrote a love note to a guy in my class I had a huge crush on, asking if he'd be my boyfriend. He was really friendly to me in the class we shared and made it a point to talk to me, so I thought he liked me too. He was part of the cool group though, and I guess I didn't notice he never spoke to me outside of class. I walked up to him during lunch to give him the note. For some reason my stupid kid brain said passing notes in class was against the rules, so clearly at lunch in front of everyone would be better. His jerk friend snatched it, opened it and read it aloud to everyone at the table. They all laughed. My crush looked mortified, which I guess counts as a rejection. He never sat anywhere near me again in class, and I was picked on every day by his group for the next year and a half. It was pretty terrible. I've made small romantic gestures in public that got rejected. Hugs, kisses, a held gaze, a hand on the knee or other body part, and it felt like sheet. Mind you, this was not some random person. When I was in the first grade I wrote "I love you" on a paper airplane and threw it to her across the classroom. She caught it, read it, smiled at me, then gave it to the boy she liked. A few days before I was going to move to another state to start medical school, my friend Shannon and I decided to go out to dinner. I wanted to see what this sort of public rejection would feel like. Because, I dunno, I was weird. So I borrowed a ring from another friend. And before we went out I told Shannon that I wanted to publicly fake propose to her at dinner. And that she should reject me. And leave the restaurant. She was totally down. So we're at dinner. It's pretty crowded, Friday evening. And I stand up. Ask for everyone's attention. Say that Shannon is the love of my life and I wanted the whole world to hear me ask for her hand in marriage. Literally all eyes are on us. Shannon looks shocked. Then stammers. I can't believe you would. Just, why? And then just walked out. Shaking her head. Jaws dropped. Utter silence. The most palpable tension I ever felt. A kind waitress came over and told me not to worry about the bill and that if I wanted to leave. She understood. What could I do? I left a $20 on the table and bolted. Wouldn't have been enough to cover the meal. But would have been a good tip. Edit. I'm bad at changing names for edit anonymity. Not super romantic, but in high school I asked this girl out by getting her a sheet ton of flowers I got from Vons. IDK what I was thinking a lot of them were super wilted and ducked up. I set it up before our careers class and then when people started walking in I realized this was kinda ducked up. When she showed up I was super nervous and red and sweaty. When she approached her desk she saw the sheet wilt flowers and looked mortified. I kinda chickened out and I just asked her if she wanted to go out to hot dog on a stick with me cause I'm a fast thinker on my feet. She was kinda nice about and let me down easily but the look on her face still makes me cringe. She took the flowers off her desk and left them underneath the desk after the class was over. In retrospect I probably should have gone to Smith's to get the flowers. I personally really hate the idea of that. You should never put someone in a corner like that. And make them feel socially obligated to say yes. If you're going to ask them, do it privately. In 7th grade we had some field trip to go ice skating. As we were walking to the ice rink, about 20 minutes from the school, I saw the cutest chick I've ever seen. This was early in the year. And most of us all came from different primary schools. So I didn't have a clue who she was. I asked some kid next to me what her name was. Which, by the end of the 20 minutes as news traveled up to where she was at the front of the group, it became I wanted to ask her out. She declined. But a couple months later, while my dad was filling up at a Canadian Tire, I saw two chicks banging on their car window. It was her and her sister trying to get my attention. I left the country shortly after, but will always have fond memories of her. Wherever you are, Stephanie, I will always remember you. I just tucked my pecker back into my pants and casually walked away. The only really awkward part was her following me and yelling about how jizzing on her hair in public isn't her idea of romance. You can't make everyone happy, I guess. Dude. Alright. A couple Christmases ago, when I was married, I had bought my wife a Jeep, new family car considering we had recently had our first son. I had bad credit. Needed a cosigner. But the most important thing was making my wife feel safe when driving around. Anyway, I decided that the company Christmas party would be the perfect time to give it to her, so I went out. Bought a carbo. Drove her to the party in our sheet Ford Escort and had my buddy drop the Jeep off and put the bow on the hood. About an hour into the party I couldn't take it any longer. I had my buddy park the car right outside the front door and asked my wife if she wanted a Christmas present early. She said yes. And I asked her to come outside. There's the Jeep with the bow. She looks at me and says, so? What? You had to give this to me here? You're really selfish. Thanks for embarrassing me. She went inside, picked our kid up from the childcare and asked me to drive the Ford home while she took the Jeep. That was it. Just leaving me absolutely speechless and my pride the size of a mustard seed. I have never been so humiliated and dejected in my life. I never want to feel like that again. Ever. Not me. But a friend of mine broke up with her boyfriend. Blocked his number. And moved out of state. He was a big dig and spoiled. And she basically had it with him. She was living it up in a new town dating other guys when he showed up at her doorstep with begazzering and asked her to marry him. He promised he would change and give her the life she always wanted. She didn't say yes right away. But she missed her friends and decided to move back to town with him and move in. Eventually, after much persistence and him making an effort to change, she said yes. Dude went right back to being a spoiled big dick. They were engaged for like a month. I was one of the people that had to reject someone in public once. It's terrible. A girl asked me out in front of a big group at her best friend's graduation party. I just kind of got confused because I had never hung out or talked with her before. I felt horrible. But what was I supposed to do? Say yes to spare her in front of a group? I preach that even with something as small as asking someone out, you need to remember how bad it is to reject someone. And always take into account the other person's feelings. It got worse because I received a ton of texts from her friends on how I should have known and to read my yearbook. The chick wrote in my yearbook that she had a big question to ask me at her friend's grad party, p winky face and all. I never read the stuff people wrote in there. In a full stadium of about 10k people, while in uniform I asked a girl to marry me. She said yes. So I guess I'm just an asshole. My friend, let's call him Teddy, loves doing this. He'll find girls on Tinder, OKC, or whatever dating site he's on that week. Ask them out. Then propose to them in a ridiculous way. The reactions really are priceless. He'll meet a girl for coffee, get down on one knee, and propose to her. Then, once she rejects him, he'll act like he's about to cry. Turn to anyone who was paying attention. I don't understand. We had our first date here. I thought it was going so well. I asked out a girl at the end of our final band concert in front of the whole band. And she said nothing and simply walked out the door. I was with two buddies at a basketball game in a neighboring town. Buddy 1, we'll call him Greg, was dating one of the cheerleaders. Buddy 2, Frank, kind of had a thing with another cheerleader. We went to pretty much every game and started to make stupid signs to cheer on the girls, rather than the basketball players. After about a dozen, everyone in the small high school knew who we were. Frank decides he wants to ask his cheerleader to be his girlfriend. So we make our signs that say, Ashley, will you go out with me? Across all three. He decides to pull the trigger and we hold them up. She sees it for a split second and looks back at the game. No one realizes she's seen it. So the entire cheerleading squad and most of the crowd are pointing at the sign and calling her name to look. After everyone has seen our signs and she's refusing to look up, Greg's girlfriend motions to us to put the signs down. We left immediately and Frank didn't go to any other games. What is it with all these high school kids putting name, prom, on sheet and thinking it'll work? It's like they can't be asked to write anything proper, so a text message on a cardboard box will have to do. 2 roses, wrapped in poetry, enclosing tickets to Les Miserables. It wasn't super public, but it was technically in public campus parking lot as we walked to the dorms. It was a bit much of a way to ask for a date. In general, I have abandoned poetry songwriting as a wooing technique. Composing art about people sounds awesome in theory, but in practice it just makes you seem obsessed. I know a girl whose boyfriend at the time waited to take her on a vacation across the country before proposing. She felt forced to say yes and declined when she got home. Guided it in front of his whole family without talking to her beforehand. I went up to my crush and asked her out in front of the school with a bunch of people watching, just waiting around after school. She said no and said she wasn't into me. I turned around to my friends who were all huddled about 20 feet away, eagerly watching. I made an oh fuck face and they immediately charged at me and lifted me up like I was the coach of a team that just won a championship. They carried me like 100 m away while cheering and yelling, and immediately I did not care about the rejection, and everyone that saw thought it was hilarious how I got carried away from the disaster scene. Thank Duck for my friends. It sucked because I was really into her, but it's a fun memory. In high school there was this girl in my French class. I wasn't a complete nerd, but I got good grades. This girl was and still is hot. One day she tells me we should go study at Starbucks, which was across the street from school. So we started going to Starbucks once a week to study. Then the study sessions moved over to her house. At this point I thought she liked me because she would be so friendly. So one day I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said no, obviously, because I was too good looking for her. Wasn't too disappointed or sad. Couple days later she told her friends. They made fun of me in front of my mom. Felt pretty shitty. Was dating this girl who I was really into and thought I'd jump the gun by sending her a request to be in a relationship with me on Facebook. She texted me telling me she wasn't ready for that kind of commitment. God. Was I embarrassed when I next looked at my Facebook and saw tons of notifications that people had liked it and asked who the lucky girl was. Needless to say, we never went on another date and I learned about taking things slow. I didn't really get rejected, but there was this girl I had a crush on with whom I had a really friendly relationship. Since I don't have a ducking clue about why girls do certain things, I thought she liked me in the same way I liked her. She would always smile to me, and one evening when she wanted to go somewhere in town I even drove her there, but it was no good. The whole time none of my friends knew about her relationship status, so I couldn't be sure about it. Fast forward, we were at a birthday party and I thought I should make a move at some point, but suddenly I stand beside the bar and talk with some friends when some dude comes in and kisses her. I must have stood there really perplexed, because I just could not deal with this situation, because her boyfriend gave me this weird look. I quickly decided to leave and was heartbroken and shocked the next few days. The morning after the party she actually sent me a message that she was sorry that she didn't tell me about her BF before, but she didn't know how to. So at least she noticed that I had a crush on her. So I got that going for me, A somewhat grand romantic gesture done to me while I was dating someone else was that he got down on both knees, grabbed my hands and asked me to date him. When I turned him down he stood up, requested I close my eyes and open my mouth. I refused, but he assured me he wouldn't do anything weird. I hesitantly did it. He cupped his hands around his mouth, brought it close to mine and screamed "I love you" into my mouth. He gave me a wistful look and left. Several other weird and creepy grand gestures later, I got a restraining order on Valentine's Day. Everyone is talking about the cringe levels going through the roof. But all I see are brave men and women, and although it didn't work this time, they understand it was still worth it. Good for everyone here.